All right, welcome to lesson 3 on factoring polynomials by removing the greatest common factor. So this is kind of our first step in factoring trinomials, which is the big part of this outcome. But before we do that, whenever we're factoring anything, the first step in factoring is always to take out the greatest common factor, okay? So that means we need to look at each of the three terms. In example number 1 here, I've got three terms in my polynomial, so it's a trinomial, and we want to find the greatest common factor of each of those three terms, okay? So I'll just do them in different colors here so you can see what the three terms are. So remember, finding the greatest common factor, you look at the numbers 12, 4, and 6, and you think about what is the largest number that will divide into both of those numbers, or sorry, all three of those numbers. So I think that the answer to that question is 2. So we have a 2 sitting out front here. And then we look at the variables. Remember, you want to take the lowest exponent, so it has to go into all of them, so they all have at least an x. So my greatest common factor of those three monomials is 2x. Okay, so that is step 1. Step 2 is to write the GCF at the front. Okay, we did that. Step 3, now we're going to divide each term by that greatest common factor. So if we want to show that in between step, and the goal is that we hope eventually you don't need to show this in between step, but we'll definitely start that way. So I take each term and divide it by the greatest common factor. Okay, so each of those original terms divided by the greatest common factor. And now we need to do some monomial division. So we're recalling from grade 9 that when I divide, I subtract the exponents, or the way that I think of it is in this example here, this means I have 3 x's on the top, 1 x on the bottom, and I know that, so for example, if I have 3 x's up top and 1 on the bottom, I know that one of those is going to cancel away and I'm going to be left with 2. Okay, the exponent rule is that you subtract the exponents, but we'll know that I'm not a big fan of rules. So 12 divided by 2 is 6, and this will be x squared. Take away 4 divided by 2 is 2x, take away 3. So what we've done here is we have found the two things that when I multiply them together, I get back the original question. So if you wanted to check, you could do a binomial multiplication. So 2x times 6x squared would give you 12x cubed. 2x times negative 2x is negative 4x squared. 2x times negative 3 is negative 6x. Okay, let's look at example number 2. So my three binomials here are 7m cubed minus 14m squared plus 21m. So I need the greatest common factor of those things. So a number that goes into 7, 14, and 21 is 7. And into m cubed, m squared, and m is m. So I'm going to factor out a 7m. That's the greatest common factor. So I'm going to divide each term by the greatest common factor. Okay, again, some of you might be able to skip right past this step, or you might need it for a little while. Either way is fine. So 7m cubed divided by 7m is 1m squared, or just m squared. Take away 14 divided by 7 is negative 2, and m squared over m is m. 2 m's on the top, 1 m on the bottom leaves me with 1. And in the last one, both of my m's go away, and I'm left with plus 3. Okay, our last example, negative 20x squared y minus 10xy plus 5y. So whenever we have a negative term at the front, we're always going to factor a negative out. Okay, we always want to leave what's inside of the bracket as a positive. So my three terms here are negative 20x squared y, negative 10xy, and positive 5y. So I'm going to take out, so I look still at 20, 10, and 5. What can come out is a 5, but I'm going to take a negative 5. Okay, and look at my terms that they both, it contains two variables, x's and y's. So the third term in green there does not have any x's in it, so I can't take out an x. And there is a y and a y and a y, so there's a y in every term, so I can take a y out. So now, again, I'm going to maybe try and do this one without writing this step right here, but if you need to write that, you go ahead. But this is the thought process that I have. I go negative 20 divided negative 5 would be positive 4. I didn't take any x's out, so I'm going to still have that x squared. There was a y in my original term. I took a y out, so the y is gone. Negative 10 divided negative 5 is positive 2. I did not take any x's out, but I took the y out, so the y is gone. And in this last term, positive 5 divided negative 5 is negative 1. I took the y away, so there's no y's left. Okay, so we want you to move toward not having to show this step, like where we have to show the division, but if in the beginning you need to show that, please make sure you do that until you kind of get onto it. Okay, there are 3 questions here for you to try. I want you to pause the video right now. Try number 4. I've shown you that the greatest common factor is 5. I want you to tell me what's going to be left inside of the bracket when you take that 5 out, when you factor the 5 out. So you go ahead and pause the video now, do it, and then come back and check. Okay, so you can see that we'd have 2x squared plus x plus 1. It's important to note that even though 5 divided by 5 is 1, we can't just leave that off. We need to include the plus 1 on the end because it's a placeholder. My original question is a trinomial, 3 terms. So when I factor out the greatest common factor, I still need to have a trinomial in the answer here. So these have to match in their number of terms. Okay, number 5, let's look at the greatest common factor together. And then you can pause and do the rest on your own. So we're looking at 7, 21, and 7. So I look at my numbers. The largest number that can come out is a 7. And then I look at x's and y's. I can see that in the first term, there's x's, x squared. The second term has an x. The third term has no x's. So I can't take an x out. And then I have a y squared, and a y squared. So I'm going to take a y squared out. Okay, now I want you to pause and see what would be left inside. All right, so when we factor out the 7y squared, we will have x squared plus 3x minus 1. I want you to pause the video now and try number 6 all on your own. Okay, so the answer down here is 8 times 25x squared minus y squared. Okay, remember that you can always check your factoring by distributing the monomial back again. Okay, and you should end up with the original question. So if I take 8 and multiply it there and multiply it there, I will end up back at the original again. Okay, I want you to go ahead and move on to the practice questions. And if you're struggling, make sure you put up your hand and ask.